Have you ever seen how in nature some organisms work together to form a symbiotic relationship where both thrive? That's exactly Dark Souls 2 and mistakes if they were two different beings. The possibilities of a top 5 worst mistakes you can make are endless with this one. I mean, we're talking about a game where you can make everything harder for yourself in the first half hour without ever noticing it. Or by following your instincts and attacking an obnoxiously looking creature who's actually friendlier than your real life friends. Because of these, I've decided to do just that. Rank what in my opinion are the worst decisions you can make in Dark Souls 2. Let's go. Starting with number 5, I would say consuming a giant soul. Across the game, there will be occasions when you can connect with nature and relive a giant's memories. If you achieve your goal in these flashbacks, you'll be rewarded with a giant soul, which are very useful for one occasion, and that's fighting King Vendrick. If you have all 4 of them in your inventory, Vendrick will be a pushover, because you'll deal more than enough damage to him. He still hits like a truck, but you'll hit like a V2 rocket, so that's fair. However, if you consume a couple or more, the difficulty of the fight will noticeably increase because you'll barely dent his HP. The damage you deal to him with no souls is so minuscule that it will take minutes to even trigger him to start the fight. He must have thought it was the wind until he saw a small ant poking his feet with a toothpick. Theoretically, you can recover these souls by respawning the ancient dragon over and over since it rewards you with a giant soul. But that's where I cross the line. I despise that boss fight. It's repulsive and one of the worst Fromsoftware has ever created. For number 4, I have not summoning. Dark Souls 2 has a bunch of NPCs and most of them have quests. As short as most of them are, there are still quests that reward you with weapons and pieces of armor. Leaving Navlaan's and the Darkdiver's quests aside, which are respectively the longest and the most convoluted in the game, what if I told you the easiest to miss are Lucatiel's and Benhart's? To finish their quests, which in my opinion are some of the best because of the rewards and the story, you mainly need to find them, talk to them, and also summon them for some specific bosses, and have them survive the whole fight. Now, veteran Souls players take pride in beating a boss alone. According to most of us, the game hasn't been beaten properly if you don't do it with the bare hand God gave you, and that implies going in solo. The moment pride gets in the way, and you decide not to summon these 2 characters because you want to show to the rest of the community how big your male member is, that's when you get locked out of Lucatiel's armor. I put this mistake in number 4 because by using the ascetic, you can respawn the bosses in this game and beat them again with either of these 2 characters. But be careful, Lucatiel's quest is time sensitive. If you talk to her at Aldia's Keep before beating 3 bosses with her, forget about completing her quest until your next new game cycle. Some other NPCs who you can summon have useful interactions, for example the dude that shows you can burn the mill and somehow that gets rid of the poison in Mythos Arena. So yeah, don't be afraid of summons. They don't sting. Unless it's Tark. Number 3 is more tied to a gameplay decision, and that's running past enemies. Dark Souls 2 has been heavily criticized for many features, and I can see how having 6 too many enemies is frustrating, especially if I have already beaten them before. But I need to do so again because I forgot my iframes at home while crossing the boss fog wall. It's a combination of decisions that I'll never understand. Completely bloating the path towards some bosses with enemies, removing your invincibility while crossing the fog wall, and seemingly making enemies follow you like a stray dog to whom you've just given a piece of bread. You might as well come home with me since you've followed me all the way here. The fantastic solution to this issue is to tear down their numbers by killing each enemy NPC a dozen times. That's how you get them to despawn. Or using the bow and shooting each, and aggroing them one by one so you don't get jumped by all of them at the same time. In some areas that won't work though. I'm looking at you, Iron Keep, with that invisible line that starts triggering every alone night in the continent. Actually, the worst mistake in Dark Souls 2 is missing a hidden path because you were busy hitting the wall instead of pressing interact. Don't miss out on the good stuff here. The subscribe button actually works when you hit it. Give it a try. In the second spot I got fighting back after being bullied. So not too long after creating a character, the game itself proceeds to make fun of your little abomination, specifically through these old ladies.
Oh my. Your face.
I'm not much of a hot-headed person, so I didn't retaliate, but I assure you that I thought of introducing their asses to my fist for a second. The thing is, ridding the world of bullies is not the correct action to perform here. You need to take their insults like a champ and move on, since these hags are your only source of respecking your character in this game. If you kill the old crone, I hope you're satisfied with the allocation of your attributes, because you won't be able to change them until New Game Plus. Good luck trying to realize the usefulness of these women, because not one of them tells you that their purpose is to redistribute your stats. And now, let's have a look at some of the honorable mentions before revealing the top one. They are not contenders for the number one spot. That one is pretty clear to me. They're just mistakes that could have made it into the list. I don't want to sound like a scratched disc, but I wanted to mention how not leveling your adaptability is as much of a mistake as it's a meme nowadays. It's a new attribute only present in this game that requires a lot of internet browsing to figure it out. The reason you've been dying is you've ignored this stat. Basically, it increases your agility, which consequently decreases the time to drink your Estus, the slowest ever in the series if you don't invest here, and most importantly, your iframes, which represent your invincibility while rolling. All these times you got hit when you thought you shouldn't have.
Just level ADB, bro.
And what about this? Ah, nah, this is just DS2 jank. For my next honorable mention, I have using human effigies wrong. These items are the consumables you use when you want to become a human. It's only normal for a beginner to use them as freely as they can, since Dark Souls 2 punishes you with every death by reducing your total HP, and the human effigies just so happen to counter that. As farmable as they are, I strongly advise against munching on them, since it is a Dark Souls game after all. You'll probably die more times than there are human effigies in the map, and then when the time comes to summon a friend for a boss fight, you won't have any. I'm kidding, soul memory is a thing, which means you won't be paired with that friend regardless. Furthermore, you can also use them to nullify any type of online activity for a long period of time, which can be useful in case you're being invaded all the time. This is not as useful nowadays, since the game isn't as active, but bear in mind that in here, you can be invaded while human and hollow, so I can definitely see some people using this feature back in the day. Next, not using life gems is something that I'm guilty of. As a pro gamer myself, I've developed that no item consuming syndrome that many players suffer from. Briefly, I'm always saving consumables for later. And later is a time that never comes, just like when you procrastinate your chores. And that's pretty bad, since life gems are very abundant and they are better than your Estus if you don't invest points in adaptability. And lastly, failing to explore every original feature this game has to offer. I'm not talking about the stupidity of making torches a consumable, but rather things like rolling into poison will fill faster in comparison to when you just dip your legs in the puddle. I feel bad for the people who never discovered the power stance and think this is something that came out of Elden Ring. Saint Tyr's spear unlocks its true potential once broken. This is so unique even now, more than a decade later. You can shoot the bell at No Man's Wharf to call the boat, skipping 80% of the level, and so many more. Dark Souls 2 is still my least favorite Souls game, but I gotta give them props for having the best attention out of all of them. And that's why it's a huge mistake not to find these things out. Because they are such detailed and impactful mechanics, they can actually change your perspective on the game. But alas, there's only so many details worth mentioning when your boss fight pull sucks ass 70% of the time. And finally, the worst mistake you can make in Dark Souls 2 has got to be following Navlaan's quest without thinking. Navlaan is a sorcerer who's been possessed by an evil spirit. That makes him have a double personality, and depending on whether you're human or hollow, the real Navlaan or the evil spirit will talk to you. To do his quest, you need to let go of the intrusive thoughts and avoid pulling that lever. If you release him, there's no way to lock him again, not even with an ascetic. While he's locked, talk to him while hollow, and he will give you 4 missions to get rid of certain NPCs in the game. Gilligan, Kale, Falcon, and the Emerald Herald are his targets, and to prove you've successfully disabled their breathing skill, you need to bring an object that confirms their deaths. The real mistake here is actually killing them, since there's always a different way to obtain their objects. Kale will give you his just by naturally progressing the game and defeating some main bosses. Gilligan's mini ladder is purchasable. Falcon's staff is obtainable if you have 20 or more intelligence and faith. Easily doable if you have a couple of respects to spare. And finally, the feather from the Herald is given to you once you exhaust her dialogue at the Dragon Eyrie. Killing some of these characters is no big deal, unless we're talking about the one you need to level up. In every Fromsoftware Souls delivery, there's no way to get stuck like this. In Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3, the maidens resurrect every time you kill them. In Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring, your character levels up at any given bonfire. In Dark Souls 2, however, you need the Herald to level up. And if you ever happen to kill her, well, let's just say you have to get used to the level you have in this game cycle, because you'll stay right there for the remainder of this playthrough. Yep, she does not resurrect, so be careful next time you leave the controller on the sofa while wielding a big bonk next to her, because it might be the last you see of her. If you're interested in watching more Souls mistakes, check out this playlist I've created for these videos. At the moment we got Bloodborne, Sekiro, Dark Souls 1 and 3, so you have plenty of unfortunate content to binge watch. Stay tuned for more Souls content, comrades. Be seeing you around, friends. Bye.